Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Talking Ted Lasso here.
Yes.
The wonderful podcast YouTube channel. Exciting times as we really get into it now. I feel like now, look, okay, we've had the first 6 episodes. It's progressively gotten a little bit more deep. It's progressively gotten a little bit more interesting and kind of rounded out a lot of things as a show. I feel like these 2 episodes we have today, 7 and 8 of season 1 of Ted Lasso, are really what people have always said, yourself included, of course, Janine, have always said, oh my God, you need to watch Ted Lasso. It's just like so good. And you can think from the outside, well, how is it so good? It's 25 minutes, half an hour of a show. It's a really quite funny comedy. And like, okay, it might be like so good as a comedy show, definitely, sure. It's a bit of a silly concept of a show.
Yeah,
So
this
how
fish
can
out
it
of water.
possibly be? Yeah. So how can it possibly be this staggeringly impactful kind of emotional thing? And over the course of the 6 episodes we've done prior to this, I've kind of come to understand how that's possible more and more and more and more and more. And obviously very much enjoy watching the show, just watching the show.
Yeah.
But when you go in with all these ideas of this is like life-changing television and that kind of stuff, it gives a lot of pressure onto something like that ultimately starts as quite a small scale thing.
Yeah.
As quite an intimate kind of thing. Like, how does it become that?
This
Does
thing,
it gradually become that? And it now is solidified to me that it does gradually become that, because it is just dealing with unexpectedly emotional things.
Yes, real things. It gets a little silly. It creates characters that you really genuinely care about. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. These 2 episodes today, episode 7 of season 1, which is Make Rebecca Great Again. Should we be doing that after what she's done? Maybe, I don't know. She's a very great character, and we like Rebecca for being that.
Yes, I like that we got to see a lot more of her conflict in this episode.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
And obviously episode 8 as well, which is the Diamond Dogs, which is perhaps even more impactful, kind of in a different way, in a different type of emotion. I think the first episode we're talking about today, which we'll get straight on into, Janine, I suppose.
Yes.
Episode 7, Make Rebecca Great Again, is it's kind of a hard episode emotionally, because you've got both Ted and Rebecca dealing with pretty tough situations.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're at an away game, so the whole team is staying at a hotel, and it's a team that they've never been able to beat, so there's that kind of pressure there. So we're
Which
kind
is
of off.
I find strange, actually, that Richmond haven't been able to beat Everton in 60 years, given that Everton aren't great. Like, they were great. They were pretty decent.
See,
15
and
years
I
ago.
wouldn't know that, so I always appreciate the football insight that you can bring to Ted Lasso. It enriches my viewing experience
Like
as somebody
20
who's
to
already watched it.
15 20 to 15 years ago, they were a consistent sort of top 8 side in the Premier League. But for the last 5 years, they've literally, how they haven't been relegated, I do not understand. How
Well,
they
in
haven't
this reality, I guess it's a struggle for Richmond, and they always kind of worry about playing this team.
Seems
So
like
there's that
Richmond
kind of.
lose every week, but inexplicably.
Well, I mean that they even say that like they're close to being regulated and relegated.
Yes,
And that they've had several losses. So it's in the looming air that is kind of what's happening anyway. So the pressure's on in that aspect. And then on top of that, this weekend is also the anniversary, or Rebecca's anniversary with her ex-husband. So she's kind of been struggling with that. And
Yeah.
then Ted, on the other end, he's like getting this pressure from his wife to sign these divorce papers. So that's bringing up
Yeah.
some anxieties for him. Um,
Yeah. That she's being pleasant about, sure, because she wants this, obviously. So she's pressing it, but I don't think it feels overbearing, her level of pressure, but I think it is understandable that Ted feels it's overbearing.
Yeah, because it's like he's trying not to think about it, and then he gets a text message, "Hey, have you had a chance to sign the papers?" And then when he's like already like looking at the papers and she's already signed, then he's getting another text message from her lawyer, "Hey, have you signed the papers?" And
Yeah.
then it just feels like it's compounding. And it's already something that he's like really broken up about. So that just kind of heightens it, the messages that, seem normal, but to him it's just all very heightened. So yeah, different ends of the spectrum, like Rebecca mourning the loss of a marriage and him kind of also doing the same. But him kind of in the middle, in the midst of it, and Rebecca
Yeah.
trying to kind of figure out how to navigate the post of it. And so Keeley kind of is huge for that because I love their burdening friendship. And so she's like, well, I'm gonna come with you and we're gonna hang out and I'm gonna cheer you up and this whole kind of thing. So Keeley
Yeah.
is kind of there as a big support for her. But then
And I
she
mean, she really
also
does a hell of a
yes,
job at doing that as well. It's such a lovely little bond that they've
yes.
built. It's kind of weird then when Keeley turns up on everybody's hotel television.
Yes, it's really funny because Rebecca's like on the phone trying to figure out where to like make reservations for dinner. And so she calls out to Keeley. She's like, "Hey Keeley, what do you want to do for dinner?" And she's like, "The steakhouse in the hotel is the best steakhouse in town." And she's like, "Okay, the steakhouse. And then what else do you want to do?" And then she starts like talking, "Oh, the business center is a great place to go if you have work to get done." She's like, "Business center? What's she talking about?" And then she walks in the room and it's Keeley on the TV doing these advertisements. And
That she doesn't even
so
remember
she's like, "I don't
doing.
even remember filming these." And so it's just kind of a running gag all weekend because everyone sees her. Like Roy runs into her and he's like, "I've been thinking about you all weekend." She's like, "Oh, you have?" He's like, "Yeah, you've been on my TV all weekend." So it's kind of a funny thing. And then Rebecca's other friend, like her best friend Sassy, ends up showing up.
Yes.
Um, and it turns out, Sassy has a daughter and Rebecca is the godmother to her daughter, but she actually hasn't seen them in like years, in like 6 years or
Yeah.
something like that. So, Sassy is a little bit hurt by that you kind of just like, going through this thing and you just didn't even bother to call me or so Rebecca's feeling kind of bad about that, but Sassy is kind of just very cool and kind of silly, and she kind of
Yeah.
knows the real silly Rebecca, and so she's trying to get her back to that, which I think it speaks to the title of the episode.
It
Um,
does, definitely.
so she's there to kind of bring out the real Rebecca. So I like that moment where, Rebecca goes to the bathroom and she's talking to Keeley and it's like, if you like this version of Rebecca, you'll like the real Rebecca. This is not the real
Yeah.
Rebecca. Like she's
Yeah.
silly and goofy and she's a beautiful singer. Like she's kind of lost herself since, this whole thing with Rupert. So, we're going to try to bring that out so you can see the real Rebecca kind of thing.
And
So
I think that's something we want to see, but obviously before we get back to that version of Rebecca that we obviously over the course of the show haven't seen, but
yeah.
is aware used to be there. We need her to do one thing that very much comes to the forefront at the end of the 8th episode of season 1.
Yeah.
We need her to do this one thing before
We
she
can
can
be completely
possibly,
on board with,
yeah,
saying we
before she
like
can possibly
Rebecca.
get back. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think we do and we want to.
And we
And
want to. Yeah.
everything about Rebecca kind of screams enjoyable person, we kind of like her, we kind of respect her, but then we are reminded at such really well timed times
That she's
that
blinded by her pettiness towards her ex because he
precisely, and that
and it's
she is
always at
doing all
moments
this
yeah.
out of spite.
Yes. And it always kind of comes in moments when he's just, there's a terrible article calling her old Rebecca, or he's
Yeah.
said some snarky thing to her, or she finds out he's with a new woman. So it's always kind of something in there that like perpetuates her to keep going with it. She'll have these
Yeah.
really these huge glimmers of remorse, and maybe she shouldn't be doing this, and guilt. And
Yeah,
then
because she
Rupert,
is
yeah,
is in herself, admittedly, I think this is quite clear to see,
yeah.
getting more and more on board with Ted
Yeah, she's
and
getting
the
more endeared
team.
to him. Yes, and the team itself, because they're trying to include her in things,
Yeah.
and so the guilt of her trying to sabotage them is even worse when they're, like, calling her boss, and they want her to be there for different things, and they, have this respect for her and all of that, and meanwhile, she's trying to sabotage them. So, yeah, we see these glimmers of guilt and remorse she has until Rupert does something, and then she just gets blinded by that all over again.
Yeah.
Um, so, she has some really great moments in this episode, particularly when, they do end up winning the game. And
They do,
uh,
yeah.
that is in huge part to Nate, who um, Ted actually kind of got kind of mad.
Big Nate
Because
episode, actually.
yeah, Ted encourages him. He has these thoughts for the team, like he just wants to tell them what they're doing wrong, like they just need a kick in the ass. But he's so timid and he's scared to tell them the truth. And Ted encourages him, no, just be real with them and tell them, they'll respect you if you're just real with them. So he kind of tells them that, you used to do this great, but now you've gotten lazy. You're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. This is what you need to do to fix it. So he kind of tells each player kind of what they're doing wrong. And then he has he has it all written down, but he's kind of
Yeah.
pretty confidently telling everybody. And then he gets to Roy, who's the captain, who's tough, and he's about
Yeah.
to read what he thinks of Roy off of the paper. And I love Roy just stepping up to him and saying, no, don't read it. Say it to my face. And he tells Roy that he's old and he's slow. But your speed was never your strength. Your strength
Yeah.
was your rage and your anger, and you've lost that. Your
You can
rage was
still
your
use it.
superpower. You can it's still in there. And I know it's still in there. You can, use that. And so then Roy kind of like takes it in, and then he gets mad and like rips the bench off, and they go
Yes,
running out
Roy
there.
Roy Kent temporarily turns into the Hulk,
Yes.
and you won't like me when I'm angry situation.
Yes.
But this
And
is,
so
I think,
Nate's
I think
pushing. Yeah,
yeah,
that's good.
this is, I think, the fascinating thing about this kind of team sport dynamic
Yeah.
when you, whoever it is giving some sort of hard hitting team talk,
Hmm.
and you don't expect it from Nate. Sure, I think Nate's put on this persona to do this, right?
Yeah.
This isn't dear sweet timid Nate. This isn't even dear sweet timid Nate who Ted has got a little bit unnecessarily angry at and bitten his head off
Yeah.
simply because Ted's obviously going through
Going
it.
through
We
something.
understand
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why Ted's bitten Nate's head off when Nate's kind of
Trying to leave the note
weakly
under
kind
his
of come up
door.
to him, leave the note
Yes.
under his door.
And he's
Exactly,
like, "What are you
exactly,
doing? Get
exactly.
out of here!" Because it's like in the
Yeah,
middle of getting the text from the lawyer, sign the papers. He's been drinking,
exactly,
he's stressed, and Nate's like bothering him in this moment. So yeah,
exactly. So I don't even think it's Nate taking the anger of Ted, the unexpected anger of Ted, in and then displaying his own version of rage. I don't
no,
even think
no,
it's that. I literally think it is just, come on, Nate,
he's in
you're
being
doing this.
encouraged.
You
Yeah,
want to do this. So just turn it on for a little bit.
yes,
And he
they'll respect
manages
you
to.
for it. Yeah,
And he manages to. And they do respect him for it by the
yeah,
end. I mean, it helps that they end up winning the game,
yeah.
obviously. But considering Nate started off the episode by being locked into the undercarriage of the
Of
coach
the bus, yeah,
with all the
of the
bags,
luggage and stuff. Yeah,
um, Nate, the respect for Nate is growing and growing from within the team, and that moment with Roy just standing up terrifyingly as he does, looking like he might actually murder Nate. He's not
Yeah.
going to do that, but
No.
it's the energy play that matters in these situations, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then them all harnessing what Nate's shouted at them, and really kind of vulgarly, if that's not a word,
Yeah, like he's kind of
shouted
almost
at them.
mocking them a little bit and kind of, throwing barbs at them along with telling them how they can kind of fix it.
Which you think, I mean, this is the thing I was trying to make this point about just a little bit ago, is that this kind of team talk, I mean, can work, but will never and has never worked for me.
Okay.
Like, what are you, why are you just insulting me? Like, call it, I don't like that kind of energy.
It doesn't work for you.
In
Yeah.
terms of a team talk. And I understand it's this generalized thing, and I understand that it's not about me. I'm just giving this kind of context, as you see this so often in football, being around football like I have done, being around kind of low league football like I have done, in changing
Yeah.
rooms,
Well,
around
you talk
clubs
about
and
your
that kind of stuff.
brother playing for years. Do you think he is the type who could handle this type of talk?
Well, I mean, I'm struggling to find a word. I do apologize about that, but 100% has had team talks like that. I'm talking very, very frequently, probably twice a month. There is some sort of tirade like that. I would imagine so, because it's just what happens.
Yeah.
Obviously, the opposite happens as well. The celebrations, the real kind of encouragement.
Yeah, it's the camaraderie of it all.
The
Yeah.
camaraderie of it all, the real pleasantries, the everybody's friend aspect, the everybody respects everybody aspect. But there is that element of sometimes it takes people getting stuck into for them to realize they have to do something right. And maybe it's because I just haven't got that element within me, which may be why I didn't make it as a footballer, past the age of
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So yeah, everybody's
But
different, I think, but they all seem to be receptive to what Nate's telling, because he's like kind of insulting them, but he's also kind of telling them what they need to do to improve. So it's kind of this
yeah,
balance. It's
that's the
constructive.
key.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
coming
key.
with a constructive. So when it comes down to Roy, I just love that moment of him. Roy's like, no, don't read it off a paper, say it to my face. And him like, telling Roy like, you're old and you're slow. But then
Yeah.
telling him, no, but this is what is really your superpower kind of thing. And it works.
It's a
Um,
sign of good coaching, and the fact that Ted realizes Nate obviously has all this down, because Ted knows what Nate's going to come out with. Generally
yeah.
knows what Nate's going to come out with, not the specifics, obviously. But it's good managing from Ted to allow
To
this to
encourage,
happen in the
yeah, to
first
encourage
place.
him in that way. And
And
yeah,
it's good, and it's good coaching from Nate, who isn't even a coach, to
have that
depict it in this
opportunity.
way, or to
Yeah,
present it in this way that is
kind of tough because people don't see him that
that
way.
is tough encouragement, as
And
opposed
contrary
to contrary
to how they
to
see
what he's
him,
usually like,
and
absolutely contrary to what he's usually like, but this tough encouragement, as opposed to just ripping on somebody.
yes, and contrary to how Ted coaches them as well. So
Absolutely. Ted would never do this. Never, ever, ever do this. I do not ever expect Ted Lasso to ever just go around the room saying, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what
you're
you're
playing
doing wrong.
shit.
This is what you're
Yeah,
doing
that
wrong.
kind of thing.
Sort
Yeah.
it out. You can sort it out. You know you can sort it out. You're better than this. Stop it off. I'm never expecting Ted Lasso to go around doing that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yes, but it works and they ultimately win and they're celebrating at the end, and it's really funny that, like, Keeley's there, and so they're like,
Mm,
what should we do tonight?" And then Roy pulls Keeley up on the bench and she's like quoting the things from the video, you know, "We should, but you could partake in the great pastime of karaoke."
so that's exactly what they end up
So then
doing.
they all go do some karaoke and it's a really fun scene. And then it comes to Rebecca singing because Sassy, her friend, kind of teased that she's a great singer, which yes, she
Yeah.
definitely is. And so she starts singing the Frozen song, and everyone's just so shocked that, oh my
Mm,
gosh, and they're cheering her on. And we see Ted sitting there, and we close up on him, and he starts kind of like, his hands are getting really tense, and
yeah.
things are just getting really, out of focus for him. And then he has to kind of leave, and he's like having a panic attack. And it's really interesting because, Rebecca's in the middle of having this moment, but she's immediately out there with him
Yeah.
to check on him and make sure she's okay. He's okay. She's making sure he's breathing. She's holding on to him. She's taking his hand. And it's a really great moment between the two of them. The fact that she just left her little moment to go, and the fact nobody else really clocked that anything was wrong or that he left, but she did in the middle of
Yeah.
her having this moment. She saw something was off with him and went to make sure he was okay because
And
he's
it's
he's done that for
obviously,
her. So,
yeah.
yeah, it was like a really kind of unexpected thing that you wouldn't see her doing considering kind of her standing, or the fact that, like, she's having this moment, but she actually clocked it when nobody else did.
Yeah. And
It
I like that it's this almost, you know, returning of a favor that what
Yeah,
Ted did for her at that
at the
gala
gala.
in
Yeah,
episode 4. It's that sort of similar thing. And it shows that this could be so wonderful. This could go so well
they
if
could be
there
such a
wasn't
great
this
team.
looming
Looming thing.
Rupert issue.
Yes, and just even the illustration of, because I told you this show kind of delves into, like, mental health stuff, and, like, even the illustration of this panic attack is just like, because I found myself to be suffering from those, and
Yeah, I have
anything
in
can
the
trigger.
past.
Yes, anything can trigger. I remember I was with some friends. I was staying with them for the weekend because there was gonna be a birthday party, and everyone was getting ready, and I had, like, planned the outfit that I was gonna pack and take with me, and I go in my bag to get my and all the other girls are showing up, and they all look super cute, and I had planned my outfit perfectly. I go in my bag to get my outfit. I put it on, and my shirt is ripped. So I had a
Mm,
backup outfit as well. So I'm like, so I start to kind of get a little panicked, but then I go in my bag to get my backup outfit, and it's not there. I didn't pack it. So then all of a sudden, my hands get like Ted's, and I just
yeah,
feel my eyes welling up with tears, and I can't breathe. And so I run down to my car and I just start crying. Like, it's a dumb little thing. Like, I forgot my outfit, and I'm just like starting to, I can't breathe. I'm just
it
bawling my
happens.
eyes out, and I'm shaking over an outfit. Like, it just came over me out of nowhere. So when he's having this thing and he doesn't know what's happening to him and he's freaking out and he thinks he's dying, um it was so kind of true to life now that I've kind of been, experiencing that. And so it was
Yeah,
really just good to see, you know, because we know this character be this happy-go-lucky, nothing's ever wrong, he lets things roll off his sleeve and all this whole kind of thing. So to see him really struggling with something and really depict that in an honest way was just kind of, um, you know, it makes you feel kind of less alone, that it's not just you kind of thing. So
absolutely.
yeah,
This is what people say when they say that Ted Lasso is a very therapeutic show because
yeah,
it definitely feels that way. And within this episode, I think in particular, and yes, I think episode 8 to a different sort of therapeutic degree feels like a therapeutic show itself.
yeah,
But it really, really strongly does feel like that. Panic attacks are something I've dealt with in the past as well. I can
yeah,
remember a particular moment of being out in Manchester city centre with a bunch of people from work, seemingly having a nice time, but just end up sat down watching everything, feeling like I wasn't quite there,
yeah,
and very much things were just kind of waving over me, start feeling like this, have to go outside, and end up just sitting on the floor
Yeah, just like Ted.
outside
Yeah.
for no good reason, really, just
Yeah.
because you've had this wave of thing come over you at this
Exactly,
moment.
yeah, so, I really appreciate them not kind of shying away from things like that, and just really showing Ted, this character who, seems so happy all the time and can, like,
Yeah,
let things slide, and we'll learn more about Ted that really kinda maybe speak to why, he kind of pushes things down like he does and tries to have this positive attitude because it's kind of his not wanting to give up on things, and he doesn't
yeah,
never wants anybody to feel, bad.
yeah.
Um, and,
Which I think is
that
a great. See, this is the interesting thing about Ted as Ted, isn't it?
yeah,
Because yes, okay, you say we'll learn more about exactly why he's the way he is, but now at this point, you can see that it's such a commendable way of being. It's
yeah,
such a kind of wonderful way to be. I think it's the way to be that we should all strive to be. But
yeah,
there are reasons somebody is like that because it is so difficult to be this unbelievably positive all the time.
yeah.
There must be some sort of reason why you so very rarely let any negativity seep into your life. Like, it's great to be positive. Of course it is. We should always be predominantly positive.
Yes, and want to
However,
treat people well and not want people
yeah,
to feel less than kind of thing, but
I
at the
I do
detriment of
think,
yourself and your own emotions that can eat away
yes,
at you. Yeah.
I do think a healthier way of being is a little bit more negative than what Ted actually is.
Yes,
Like, if
you
something
have
is
to
going
have those
wrong,
you have to have those
have the
cathartic
ability to say it's
moments.
going wrong. Yeah.
Yes, and
Have the
let it out.
ability to say it's going wrong if it
Yeah.
is going wrong. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. Yes. So when this is happening to him, he doesn't even understand it. He thinks he's dying or something because he just
Yeah.
can't understand why he's feeling this way. And so it's great. Rebecca's there to take his hand and just remind him to breathe. She's telling him he's having a panic attack. She even offers to walk back to the hotel with him. And he says, "No, I'll be fine, just go back inside, tell Beard I just went back to the hotel and, all that kind of thing." So, yeah, it's this really kind of pay it forward or pay it back kind of thing. But I just liked that, like, she was in the middle of singing and immediately she clocked that he needed help and went out there for
Yeah.
him. And it just
Yeah.
speaks to like this underlying like uh, you know, this could be perfect, like you said, without this looming thing, because look how well you get on. Look how there's actually this care there for each other.
Yeah.
And Sassy had kind of run into him in the lobby, not knowing who he was, and
Mm.
thought he was kind of cute and had a flirty moment with him. So in that same evening of the karaoke, she's kind of asking Rebecca about him when she kind of finds out who he is and um, you know, says she kind of is into him or whatever. So Ted goes back, he has a shower, he's kind of feeling a little bit better, and then he gets a little knock on the door, and it's Sassy, and she just
Yes.
and I love the confidence on Sassy, she just walks in the room, she doesn't say anything, and Ted's just like,
Okay.
okay," which is just hilarious. Um, and uh, yeah, then Roy and Keeley, they kind of have a vibe
Yes.
going all in the night, and he walks her back, and then they share this like epic kiss, and then he's like, "Good night," and just leaves, and she's like, "Huh?" And she's like smelling her breath, like she doesn't know what's going on because he just literally like gave her like the kiss of a lifetime, and then just like effed off, and she's just like,
Well, I think this is Roy. This is Roy to a T, isn't it? This is
yeah,
exactly what Roy does, and I think we're both very, very excited over it during the course of this episode of Talking Ted Lasso. There's a lot to say, and
yes,
we're trying to say
I
everything
know,
in
it's a lot,
limited time, and I think we're
yes,
getting a bit overexcited with
yes,
each other and
because
shouting and all that sort of stuff.
I'm
But
sorry. Yes, I know. I've been
no, I am really trying to, hone down. I'm into it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't
I'm
stop
glad. I'm
myself.
glad.
all this situation with Roy and Keeley, there's been a little inkling before this episode, I think,
Yeah,
that
of a
something
flirtation, a vibe.
of this nature
Yeah.
may happen. However, it is in this episode where you begin to see that this may actually become a thing, right?
Yeah.
This may actually
Yeah.
start to happen. There's certain scenes, or there's one scene. I think it's Keeley and Rebecca who are talking outside after the night out and things like that. And Roy's stood back somewhere in the distance, and kind of Rebecca clocks that, or whoever it is that she's talking to clocks that. You're going to go off with Roy somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting, exciting, that kind of
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We see all this play out. You have this, as you've said, this kind of epic kiss moment, and then Roy just immediately darts away.
Yeah.
And this is Roy. How many times have we seen Roy not quite to be able to express himself properly, not quite be able to understand that he must cut out this aggro persona that he has.
Yeah.
It's great to have that, but open yourself, Roy. I think this is going to be the journey of Roy Kent,
Yes,
isn't it?
and so we do get
Opening
that.
yourself.
Yes, so we get kind of more of this in the next episode because
Yeah.
Keely's like confused, and so we do get him kind of opening up a little bit more. And then even when he has his moment with the Diamond Dogs, it's great that they kind of tell him
Yes.
what's up.
Well, should we move into the next episode then? Because feel like we've
Yeah,
covered
because I think
pretty
kind of
much
how
everything.
this episode ends really kind of still continues on, obviously, in this next
Yes.
one. So yes, Ted, he did end up hooking up with Sassy, and so now he's kind of with the Diamond Dogs, the little crew of him and Beard and Higgins and Nate, and he wants advice because he has never really done the one night stand thing, and like he's in the middle of getting this divorce, so he's kind of
Mm.
making it a bigger thing than it is. And he wants to talk to them. He's like, well, what does it mean? What should I do? What should I call her? Like, I don't know what this means. Like, he's like over analyzing it. And Beard just kind of, bears it down to, did you have fun? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
This is what I was talking about. This is a far different form of therapeutic Ted Lasso
Yeah.
behavior.
Yes.
By Ted Lasso behavior, I mean the show, not the character. Because this is now dealing with this group sort of support, or this support
Support
group
group. Yeah.
relationship advice kind of round table aspect that is a fascinating thing to kind of think about and sit yourself in within the context of a silly show about a football team.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting because I suppose you can imagine, or you'd like to think, that this sort of stuff would happen to a degree,
Yeah.
or and to a better degree in the better teams and clubs and better managed teams and clubs, that this sort of thing would be present in those rooms, in those
Yeah.
meeting rooms, in those
Yeah.
managers' rooms, that this sort of very, very supportive atmosphere, very, very kind of group advisory
Yeah, to
atmosphere
talk about kind of anything,
would be
like
present.
nothing's off limits for these kinds of conversations. So yeah, when Roy kind of has this whole thing with Keeley, like Keeley, is obviously sensing a vibe. It seems like he's into her. She goes to talk to
Yeah.
him and she's like, "Hey, do you want to get some coffee with me?" And he's like, "No, I'm busy." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And so then, he kind of has blown her off like a couple times where she's trying to like, meet up or something. And he's just like, "No, I'm busy," kind of thing. So she's like, okay. So then Jamie comes over to her place
Yeah,
and
first time we've seen Jamie since he's been, since his loan was terminated.
yes. And we learn that he thinks Ted was the one who
Yeah.
sent him back. But Kelly's like, I don't think that's what happened. He's like, no, that's what happened. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So he's convinced that Ted, like, gave him up.
He's
And so
still
you
holding a
and
grudge.
yes, and you can see he's a little hurt by that, which, like, normally, old Jamie probably wouldn't care. So I like that we
Yeah.
see this little glimmer that he's kind of hurt by that and wounded by that a little bit, which
It
just
it
shows a
l
bit of a
it leads
change.
you yeah, it leads you to believe that I think what I said maybe I wanted to happen when, we obviously found out Jamie did get his loan terminated,
Yeah.
um, or get recalled to City
Yeah, he's like,
right
Ted could have
after.
stopped it, but, like, Ted didn't
No,
even know. Yeah,
that's not the case in
yeah,
the slightest.
yeah,
But right after that whole big, you know, no, not scenario, not celebration, ceremony
yeah,
in the treatment room,
yeah,
and Jamie's come in and he's given this whole story, and it's really, really emotional, very, very impactful. Everybody's into it. You're finally seeing a little bit of humanity from Jamie Tart just for that to happen. It is what I said I kind of wanted to see
yeah,
was in the summer transfer window, Richmond actually sign Jamie Tart permanently for Ted Lasso's team,
yeah,
right? Whether we like Jamie Tart or not, I think I would like to see the continuation
yeah,
of that
of his
relationship.
growth, yes.
Yeah. Um this then this particular scene in this episode when he goes to Keeley's house and he's very hurt by the fact that he believes Ted got rid of him
Yeah,
shows to me that could still happen. Shows to me there is
there's
a
hope for growth,
desire from
continued growth. Yeah,
a desire from Jamie's side to actually continue that. The fact that, yes, that last moment actually felt good for me. And I'm not allowed to have that anymore because I've now been forgotten about by Richmond. You haven't, though, really, have you? So
mm,
you need that conversation. You need that continuing going on there. I would like to see it because I just feel again this is the kind of thing going on here. Open conversation
yeah,
is the show Ted Lasso, not the characters, biggest. It's the biggest proponent of it. If
yeah,
you understand what I'm trying to say,
yeah,
the biggest thing that the show Ted Lasso is trying to give to you, the viewer, is have open conversation with people.
yeah,
This will make you a better person. This will make you a more well-rounded person. This will be, beneficial for everybody in your life's life.
yeah.
You know, um, and I love that about it.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah, and he literally just goes over there to, like, talk to Keeley, like, he's not trying to get anything, but
no,
because she's feeling weird about Roy and kind of mad at him for, like, making her think he liked her and then just kind of blowing her off, she ends up just sleeping with Jamie.
yeah,
Um And so then, she's actually sitting there with Roy and talking to him, and she's like, "What's going on? Like, you're so confusing." Because he like comes up to her and like asks her if she wants to like go to a movie or something. She's like, "You're so damn confusing. Like, what do you want?" He's like, "What?" And like he doesn't even realize that like what he's done wrong. And she's like, we had that great kiss, and that was not a crappy kiss. Like, so I don't know.
yeah,
And then I asked you to coffee, and you said you were busy. He's like, I was busy, and so she's just so confused. And so he explains to her that, I've had so many one night stands and they always end terribly, or somebody going to the tabloids and saying things about me. And I didn't want this to be that. So I wanted to kind of take my time with it.
yeah. Because he
And
actually cares this time, but he doesn't want to say it like that because that would be far too
yeah,
open.
so yeah, so he kind of says it in his roundabout, grouchy way. And then she's honest with him. She's like, I want you to know that I slept with Jamie. He's like, well, yeah, I know you slept with Jamie. He's like, no, like last night, you know,
Yeah,
because I was mad at you because you were being weird. And he's like, so you slept with him to get back at me for something that I didn't even know I did. And she's like, no. Okay, maybe, yeah. So I like the kind of honesty between the two of them. And I love that that's just her to tell him that immediately, just to
yeah,
clear the air so they're not starting anything with anything in between them. and he is kind of like grouchy, but like they weren't actually officially together. So it's like, can he get
Not at
mad?
all.
And so she's like, well, why don't you come and talk to me about it later when you're not so, you know, feeling weird about it. And so he kind of goes with, and so that's when he goes to and talks to the Diamond Dog. So I think he just goes to talk to Ted, and
He
then
does.
Ted calls out the whole Diamond Dogs, and it's like, here comes in Nate and Higgins and Beardo, and then like,
I mean,
uh, Roy's like, oh my
Ted,
god, this is my worst nightmare.
of course he is. I mean, Ted might as well have kind of whistled and they all just come
Yeah, like he
gathering
sent out a
round.
text and like they all showed up and they're like, oh, so Keeley, you're having problems with Keeley, and like they already know like the problem. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible." And so then he's explaining, well, something's been happening, and she, we're just kind of starting things up. And it turns out she slept with Jamie last night. And they're like, dude, like you can't get mad at her for your past. And like kind of Ted like reverse psychologizes him.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah.
And but it's all very humorously done as well, though,
Yes.
isn't it? This is, I think, the great balance, the consistently great balance of this
Yeah.
show is that it's doing all these very, very, hyper emotional kind of, or
Yeah.
hyper impactful, maybe not hyper emotional. There's no heavy melodrama or anything like that going on,
No.
but very, very impactful moments, all in the guise of this easy kind of nudge humor.
Yeah, like he's kind of making this big deal about it, and they're all kind of telling him, "You can't judge her for her past. Like you guys aren't officially dating." And then kind of Beard just brings it home with like, because
Mm,
Beard is good at bringing it home, and he's just like, "Grow up, get over it."
mic drop.
And everyone just like is like, "Yeah, man." And he's like, "You're all pricks." And just like leaves. Because he just doesn't, he obviously doesn't, he knows that that's the answer, but he doesn't want to
Of
hear it
course he
kind of
does.
thing. Um, so ultimately, then yeah, he ends up asking Keeley out, and they go on a cute little date, and they're like, outside somewhere, and they kiss, and like a paparazzi's taking a picture of them.
Yes.
And so he goes to the paparazzi, and he, takes the whole like film from them,
Gets
and
angry at the paparazzi.
yeah, and
Takes
he
the SD card from them, doesn't he?
yes, and he's like, "Look, we get pictures from our first date. Let's go. I'm gonna cook you some food." And just takes Keely and goes. It's like so cute. Um, so yeah, they've kind of solidified. Okay, we're gonna like go ahead with this relationship situation. So really,
They
really
have,
cute
yeah,
here.
and I like it. I like the dynamic, to be honest, because I think it would be easy, and it was easy, and this is why it started off that way as a show, to
Yeah,
put somebody with the sort of stereotype of Keeley with somebody of the stereotype of Jamie. It
yeah,
made sense,
yeah.
to
On
start
paper,
off
kind of
that
thing.
way on
Yeah,
paper. A model and an
and
incredibly arrogant football player. It just
yeah, and
makes
like
sense.
has said several times that she only has dated football players.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But we learn that Keely's far from the stereotypical model, and Jamie's still Jamie. Um, so really, we we understand that Keely deserves better
yeah,
and should want better. And
yes,
Roy is something totally different
yeah.
because Roy has. I don't think Roy has any confidence in himself whatsoever. He just has knowledge that he has done good things. I
Yeah.
don't think he doesn't have this swaggering attitude in any way whatsoever.
No, he has this kind of grouchy facade, and you kind of think it's maybe just a show to protect himself. But then, we've seen early on before they were even a thing while she was dating Jamie that Keeley has this ability to kind of break him a little bit and make
Yeah.
him, and challenge him in that way and kind of break his little grouchy facade. So
Yeah,
I
there's
like that they gave us glimmers of that early on, and that we've established this really good relationship, like even at the big auction thing when he tells
yeah.
her that something she did upset him, and she immediately apologizes, so we know that they have a really good kind of sense of kind of coming around to communicating with each other. So I like that they gave us glimmers of them really having an interesting connection that is far different from her connection with Jamie, so that when now this comes about, we know that it's going to work.
because that is what I think is key to their whole dynamic, is the fact that they are both staggeringly honest people.
Yeah.
Like, they will just tell each other exactly what is happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, in the most direct way possible. Like, you think it's not direct for Roy to say, to have the conversation of, when I asked you to go out for coffee and you said you were busy, what did that mean? It meant I was busy. Like, that's it's just such an honest answer. Like, it's a very direct answer. You've not asked any more than that. So that's what it meant. So it's that kind of real, harsh, literal kind of honesty that is going to do well for them, because it allows those little starting moments allow for the actual detail reveals of reasoning and reasons and things like that. I love that scene when they're in the press room and Keeley's there jumping from seat to seat in the press room, asking Roy questions about their own starting this dating thing going on. It's very, very funny.
It's very
Roy's
funny.
getting increasingly
Uncomfortable.
more annoyed, but increasingly more into it.
Endeared as well. Yes. So it's a really kind of cute start to their whole thing. It's a miscommunication, but they kind of get back on track, which is really cute.
Yeah. And I
The
like
other
that
kind of
Roy's been doing yoga with a load of 60-year-old women who have no idea who he is.
So that's what he was busy with on those times. And so very cute and unexpected. It's like the whole thing kind of revealing his whole cute little relationship with his niece.
Yeah.
And
that he then had to go out on a night out with all these 60-year-old women because one of them was going through a tough time and needed some support.
Yes.
And it's just Roy being Roy and a load of,
and him
what
also,
you
but
have
also
to
him kind
assume
of
is
being kind of slightly
incredibly.
embarrassed to say that
Of
because it
course
doesn't
he
fit
is.
with his persona. Yeah.
Of course, you can imagine the scenario. You can imagine the scene, can't you?
Yeah.
8 60-year-old women gossiping, and Roy sat there being a part of it somehow.
Yes, and just
Like,
like telling him the
getting
guy's shit,
involved.
like kind of thing, and just it's like sticking up for them in his grouchy way, which is just like adorable. So yeah, a really cute start to their whole situation. And then kind of the other big thing that happens, Ted and Rebecca are going to meet one of the kind of part owners who have stake in the team.
Yes.
And here comes Rupert and his new girl, Rebecca. New Rebecca.
Yes, new Rebecca.
And she's like, "Oh, we're here to meet the Milk Sisters, who are the ones, that they're there to meet to talk about their stake in the team." And he's like, "Oh, they're not coming. I bought them out." Well, I couldn't buy them out because he was not part of their. I think the
Yeah.
divorce was that he couldn't own part of the team or whatever. So Rebecca, she ended up buying that part of the team. So now he has stake in it
with his money.
Yes. And so he bought out the Milk Sisters half of it. So now he has like a whole big chunk of it. So she's not really happy with that. And he makes a big show of it, and then also reveals in this moment that he's proposed to Rebecca. So she's engaged, and he's buying drinks for the whole bar. So everybody thinks he's the greatest. And then Ted kind of decides.
Everybody seems to think he's the greatest anyway, don't they? And the fan population of Richmond.
Yeah, because he's super charming and just everybody loves him. I think we kind of learned that from the gala thing as well.
It's almost as though they weren't. I mean, how these stories have been presented in the press of Rebecca and Rupert's divorce, Rebecca taking over the team. I don't think we know to the fullest degree how they have been presented in the press. But it does seem surprising to me that Rupert, by the population of Richmond, isn't considered more of a villain.
Well, I mean, Rebecca Suss talks about it like, oh, he's a man. So they're never going to like dislike him or shame him or anything like that because he's a man. So she kind of speaks to that every once in a while when it's like articles come out. They never kind of talk bad about him because he's a man. He can do all these affairs and all these crazy things, and they aren't going to criticize him for it. They're going to, applaud him for it.
Whether this is then just me as a United fan being so disillusioned with club ownership, but I know full well so many people, so many fans of clubs are so disillusioned with their own ownership, their own club's owners,
Yeah.
that they actively don't. I can think of genuinely off the top of my head, I can think of one Premier League club whose fans like their owner. Like, you know
Yeah,
what I
well, I
mean?
guess if he's buying up out the bar and buying you drinks, that kind of maybe helps matter some. And and we see him kind of being very schmoozy and put on the charm, and so people like that as well. But yeah, Ted ends up, deciding to challenge him to this dart game and says, if I beat you, then you will give your whole stake to Rebecca.
Yeah, it's like you're not allowed in the director's
Oh,
box as long as Rebecca
yes,
still
is
owns the
still the
team.
owner. Yeah, so, um, Rupert thinks, "Oh, he's not gonna know because Ted kinda, fakes him out a little bit and throws a few
Yeah,
darts and doesn't do very well. Meanwhile, Rupert pulls out his little case of, like, his own personal
yeah.
darts.
But I think darts is this kind. It's a pub game, obviously, isn't it? So it's therefore far more typically British than that it is American. I think
Yeah.
you could consider it a bar game. Of course, there are plenty of darts boards and darts players in the US, but I just think it is this more traditionally kind of British
Pub
thing.
thing. Yeah.
Um,
Um
so he's not going to think Ted knows anything about darts, but
Yeah, so Ted kind of fakes him out a little bit and throws a couple that are off, and Rupert pulls out his box of custom darts. And then
yeah,
Ted is like, "Oh, whoops, I do know a little bit something about darts," because then he throws one and, like, makes it, like, really good.
yeah.
And so
It's
then
like
the
I
whole
forgot I was left-handed.
yes, and the whole pub is like, "Oh," so then it becomes this kind of back and forth, and it comes down to kind of the final thing. And so Ted has to, make a certain amount of points and then get a bullseye to beat Rupert. And as he's doing it, he's kind of giving this speech about his dad and how his dad used to take him to play darts um all the time. So that's how he got really good
Yeah.
at it.
What was it?
Um
Every Sunday at a sports bar from the age
mhm.
of 10 till I was 16 when he
When he
died.
died, yes. And you see, and they kind of, I like that they take a moment to kind of pan at Rebecca, who's like learning this thing about him,
Yeah.
and kind of, she has a sensitive like reaction to it. And obviously Ted makes all the shots, and yeah, and it's like this great moment. And so Rupert, he tries to play it off like it's not a big deal, and he tells Bex that she's his consolation prize and they're going to go
Mm.
home and whatever. But Rebecca's like, "Oh my gosh, that feels so good. That's so thank you, Ted." And like, he kind of tells her, "Okay, well, now you have to do one thing." And so then she ends up buying out the bar as well and buying
Yeah.
everybody a drink. And
And
so they have this
it's this is what I mean. It's this relationship between the two of
yeah.
them that is so good and could be so perfect if not for this one massive
Yes, because
issue.
look what he did for her. He gave her this big F you moment to Rupert, which is what she's doing all of this for anyway.
Yeah.
And the fact that he did this for her, and she also learns this really personal thing about him in the midst of all that. Um, yeah. And so then it kind of ends the episode with her, telling Higgins to manipulate some other thing to get back at Rupert. Because I think the whole thing was that they didn't have enough seats. They had a bunch of open seats,
That's
and
right.
they know their rivals are going to buy up the seats, so that their whole side is going to be made up of the opposite team, and so that's just
Yeah.
not a good look. And she's like, "Do it. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care, if that's what happens." And Higgins is just like, "F off." And she's like, "What?" And he's like, I can't do
This is
this.
dear
This is
sweet timid Higgins as well.
Yes, and he's like,
which
"No,
they
I'm
booed
not
to a
doing
goose.
it. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, this team could have a chance, and like, we're doing really good, and Ted is great. Like, just stop this whole thing." And she was like, "You never talked to Rupert like this when you were like sneaking all these women in for him to have all these affairs on me." And he's like, "I know, and I was wrong for that, and I have to live with that, and I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore." And she's like, "What are you gonna do? Quit?" And he's like, "Yeah, I quit." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I know what you're doing. You're just gonna come groveling back." And he's like, "No,
And he
I'm done."
doesn't. He doesn't do
No,
that.
no,
And I
he
don't
just
want to see him do that
yeah.
either.
Yeah, so, like, she, like, laughs it off thinking he's just bluffing, but he's, like, serious. He's like, "No, I'm done." And so he storms off, and so then she kind of has the sobering, like, oh, shoot." And then
Yeah.
immediately at that moment, Keeley walks in, and she thinks, "Oh, Keeley, my friend." And Keeley is like, "This was you, wasn't it?" And she shows her the pictures of that were, like, her and Ted, that
Yeah,
were
from
the
ages ago.
tabloids. Yeah, that the tabloids were gonna run to kind of show that, oh, Ted is having this affair with his star player's girlfriend kind of thing. And because it was on that photographer's SD card that Roy had
Yeah.
gotten, and she said, "I talked to the photographer, and he said, you're the one who told him to take those photos. It was you all along. And if you don't
Don't
tell
deny it.
Ted," yes, "don't deny it, because I know it was you, and if you don't tell Ted, I will." And she kinda
Yeah.
storms out, and Rebecca's just like, "Ugh,"
End of
and
episode. I mean,
yes.
it's a tough moment for Rebecca. She's had all this greatness over the course of these 2 episodes. I think it's been very, very positive
And great
for
moments,
Rebecca.
personal moments with her and Tad as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
To just be hammered with the realization that she actually must be honest with him. She must be
Yes.
honest with him.
Yeah.
And I am expecting that honesty, by the end of this season, of which we've only got 2 episodes left
Yeah.
of season 1. So in those next 2 episodes, on the next Talking Ted Lasso, I will be stunned if we're not talking about a scene or a sequence of scenes where Rebecca comes clean to Ted.
Okay.
I have to assume that will happen, because I don't see how there's a season 2 of Ted Lasso without that honesty
With
in
that
place.
still kind of looming over everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is obviously a season 2, a season 3, and an upcoming season 4 of Ted Lasso. So logic
Yeah.
suggests it's there. But I love how harshly it does end, because it needs that. And this is what I'm saying. This show, it promotes that more than
Yeah.
anything else. It promotes that level of honesty, that level of truth telling, that level of openness more than anything else. Being open is what this show wants its own characters to be, and it is what it wants you, the viewer, to be as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love it for that, because it is that very, very kind of healthy mental way of being, or mentally healthy way of being,
Yeah.
I should say. Ted Lasso's great for doing that. These 2 episodes definitely were that a little bit more next level of elevation of impact, and the therapy aspect of the show, the mental health dealing with aspect of the show. My words are all over the place today. I do apologize for the way I'm
No,
speaking
that's
during the
okay. It's
course
okay.
of
You're
this
just so
episode.
excited because
Terrible.
you're loving Ted Lasso so much.
Well, no, I very much am. I want to sort my speech out a little bit. I feel off at the moment. Maybe I'm not warmed up. Maybe I've not woken up yet. I don't know. But I can't say any more great things about the show, to be honest with you. I'm really, really very, very much enjoying it. Excited to see how the season ends. I have to assume it's a positive show. They don't get relegated, and honesty comes out. It just seems to make sense. I know this is unusual for me to predict things that may happen in
Yeah.
television shows and movies, obviously, but I have to assume something like that's going to happen, because it will be too sad otherwise. And it wants to be sad in scenes, but it doesn't want to be sad as a show.
Yeah.
because being sad sometimes, but fighting through it and coming out of it is what Ted Lasso
kind of
as a
what
show
the show
wants
is
to do.
establishing. Yes. Yay. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I mean,
Yes.
I didn't have any doubt that I was right, but you know.
No, I don't imagine you did. No, you're very sure of yourself. You know, very confident in yourself.
Yes.
Some would call you the
Jamie
Tart of It's a Wonderful Podcast. No, they wouldn't call you that because you're not actually a horrible person. I'm not saying Jamie. We should hate on Jamie unnecessarily.
He's on the road to redemption.
Sure, and I'm saying that, and I'm not saying we should hate on Jamie unnecessarily, but what I am saying is your past doesn't have to make you a horrible person. You're a horrible person. Accept you're a horrible person before changing to not be a horrible person, Jamie. This is what I'm saying. Like, I want to see you get there. I appreciate your journey. I understand why you are the way you are. But the fact is, you are the way you are, no matter what's happened. You know, it was still your choice to become the way you are. Yes, it's more difficult. Yes, it's that. But there are people who go through those levels of childhood issues that you went through that don't turn out like that.
Yeah.
So, and you did turn out like that.
Yes.
So
but he's yes, and I think him actually talking about it to people is what is putting him right. So yeah,
it's interesting. Oh, exciting times on Talking Ted Lasso, Ginny. We will be finishing season 1 next episode, which is very exciting indeed. Yes, of course. This show alternates every Monday on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel with Discovering Dawson's Creek on Morgan Hasn't Seen TV. Do subscribe and ding your notification bell up there, of course. Leave your little comments about what you think of these episodes of Ted Lasso and the show in general and all the things we've very excitingly and over the top of each other talked about today.
Yes.
Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it just happens when we get overexcited.
Yes,
we can't help it. Subscribe, of course, to the main It's a Wonderful Podcast feed as well on all major platforms, wherever you do listen to podcasts. For the main show, It's a Wonderful Podcast, celebrating old movies every single Friday. Morgan Hasn't Seen Itself every Wednesday, of course. And yes, here on the YouTube channel for all the other fun stuff we do have. Things have been scrolling down at the bottom of the screen all episode long. Patreon links, donation links, social media. It is all in the description down below. So I do think there may only be one thing left to do, Janine, and that's to count us down in your finest, Roy Kent.
Stop. Why is it always Roy?
Because he's the best voice in the whole show.
Oh my god!
Unless you want to do an impression of Nate, who had a great scene, and you want to try and get that soft in your voice.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to insult you like that. Bye. Yeah.